My name is Paul Fulton, or Stephen Paul Fulton, depending who you talk to. A visual artist who lives and works in Mississauga. Lives and works, it's a good phrase. I make intricate collages, and then I paint on top in order to unify the collage to a complete whole.
Describe your materials or your process a little bit.
Sure. Oil paint, primarily because it can vary from translucent to opaque at a drop of a hat. Use traditional glazing mediums, everything from walnut oil to alkyd to damar varnish in order to get the end effect. Use a little bit of stand oil, paint thinner, etc., etc. The idea is to glaze over the entire piece in order to create one sort of value or color, and then to reintroduce opaque colors to make it brighter and less natural looking.
Can you talk about the imagery?
Yeah, actually. Social, political themes highlights the type of images that I select for the work. Usually it's the quotidian, it's day-to-day, which includes everything from birth to death, leisure to work, pleasure to pain. Some of the statements that I'm trying to pull or tease out of the work include modern or contemporary tensions with living day to day. For instance, consumption versus environmental responsibility.
Would you describe your view as anti-science?
In a way, I'd say maybe as I've said many times in the past, that the scientific method lulls humanity into a false sense of security.
Sort of a black swan thing. You can never really be sure with science. It only takes one observation to tear it all apart.
Yes, exactly. There's also other issues with if we trust it today, then it can turn on us tomorrow. Like you said, one observation might throw it all off. It's very poor at predicting the future, though we seem to place a lot of emphasis on whatever it tells us. So if they tell us something, the sky's blue today and then it turns red tomorrow, they'll twist their language or their theories in order to try to prove that they weren't really wrong. They were just a few steps away from the next discovery.
Would you describe your images as being optimistic or pessimistic?
That's a good question. There's a combination of practical technique when using the paint and balancing it with the imagery. It depends how deep you want to sort into the work, and I always maintain that what you get out of the work depends on your level of education. So if you're looking for a deeper meaning, then there's lots of free associations to draw upon, which could make it negative in a way, because it is a social political critique. But then if you're just looking at surface content, if all you want to get out of it is a 7-second run, then you're probably going to find it very positive because it's painted in a very beautiful way. And generally, most of the people in my paintings look very happy.
So would you describe your paintings as being political in nature?
I think so. I don't. If art is supposed to imitate life, then if you feel like you're an activist in your day-to-day life, then your art should probably reveal that or mirror that in some way. So it becomes complicated to try and divorce your ideology from your actual painting. So the painting itself does become an extension of political awareness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to force your opinions down somebody's throat.
I often see a strong contrast between agrarian, agricultural, manual labor and sort of harsh, cold industry in your work.
Mm-hmm.
Are those sort of two clashing themes important to you?
They are, because they're polar opposites, so it's easy to juxtapose them without too much complication. So it makes it easier to talk about the things that I find essential in day-to-day life. The fact that most of us don't even put our hands into the earth anymore, but almost everything that we consume comes from the biosphere. So it's a life, we live lives of contradiction.
So see, do you practice what you preach? Do you grow your own food, or?
I try, actually. I try. I honestly believe that we spend a lot of time kind of grooming our yards and making everything look like a manicured garden. But in most cases, I think that instead of maybe manicuring our front yards, maybe we should have vegetable gardens.
You work very much with collage.
Yes.
Do you feel taking board imagery relates conceptually, or is it a practical springboard to help you get ideas rolling?
A bit of both. So I've been challenged on many fronts about copyrighted imagery or stealing images wholesale. I guess the cop-out would be that the photographer or artist who originally took the image is much better at it than I am, so I'm relying on them.
I don't see a lot of Photoshop and digital techniques going on. Does the hands-on nature, is that important to you?
Yes, for sure. Again, it's very gratifying to work on hard copy, considering how fleeting most digital imagery is, or digital archiving is, because all it takes is a magnet to wipe it out. Whereas the hard copy, I can rely on it on a day-to-day basis to be consistent. There's also the objectness of making a painting is very important, especially when you consider that most of my competition would be coming from media sources and or television, film, commercials, etc., etc. I'm fighting with them for control and to eliminate a low attention span. So I'm technically using what I would consider the heyday of American or the North American advertising, which would be the 1950s to the 1970s, where they were just starting to formulate these ideas of subversive control over the population through specific types of imagery. So I'm employing the same standards, the same methods, and I'm also, when I use dated imagery, I'm also talking about the naivety that was pervasive through that society at that time, because obviously things have changed. And I'm trying to tap into it. And it's also a way for those who recognize the imagery and when it's from, to show them that although things change, they still say the same. So I'm hoping that the amount of hours and the elbow grease that I put into making these translates on the other end to a longer captive time for my audience.
So in that way, you think your work will stay relevant years down the road when people don't have the nostalgia factor with the 1950s imagery?
I feel like after the Second World War, when people were just starting to build up their lives, they became infatuated with stuff, and then the objectness of my paintings definitely fits into that category. So I feel like they'll be collected, if not items of curiosity, then as archaic symbols of the way we used to do things eventually, because they are hard copy. But I'm also, when I talk in the paintings, when I have a discourse coming through in the paintings, it's also about the future and where we're headed. And everything seems to end with consequences, and most of the paintings are an extrapolation of consequences.
A lot of collage work seems to look like a messy hodgepodge of elements thrown together, where yours has some amount of cohesion to it. They actually look like a proper image. Can you talk about how you achieve that? What's going on? Why do yours look like a cohesive image and not random pictures thrown together?
I guess a simple way to state it would be a response to the pervasive hegemonic order, which is basically, in this case, translates as structured environments, including respect of perspectival space, form and composition. So the restrictions placed on me as a human being in the environment that I live in associate with translates as a very strict set of rules when creating a traditional form of work. So, and in this case, it could easily be said that I tend to reference art historical isms like periods of art that came before, like for instance, realism during the late 1800s. That would eventually, merge and become surrealism, etc., etc. So lots of people could see aspects of realism and surrealism in the work. But again, I maintain this, I'm not really referencing them fully, it's just that I just happen to be forced into this corner, and this is how I'm responding to it. Again, it would also have to do with, to ease the selection of the images, and if I had just gone haywire and selected them almost at random, then I would never stop. I would never actually find an answer. And when I make these, I'm seeking answers to questions that I ask myself on a regular basis. So whenever I complete something with these rules, I feel like I'm one step closer to finding the answer, because it solidifies something that I'm trying to find. So it could almost be argued that once I collect the images, the piece is already done.